Yes, it did save my life because it became my whole life. From 9:30 in the evening till 4 in the morning, it was a continual, living, breathing, beautiful school. It was the best school that ever there was.
Hi everybody, I'm Tara Star Dancer, and I'm here with New York dance icon Morocco for a special edition of How Oriental Dance Saved My Life. Hi Morocco.
Hi, sweetheart.
So nice to be with you today.
What a pleasure.
So I'm going to introduce Morocco. She is considered a leading authority in her field of Near, Mid-Eastern, and North African dances in the US, Canada, and abroad, evidenced by her master seminars worldwide, including Egypt,
Turkey, Morocco, China, what the heck else? I'll teach anywhere they want me to because I didn't learn it to keep it in a box in the closet.
Morocco is also an ethnic dance scholar and author, has written for several publications and been reprinted in dance, medical, and feminist publications internationally, including her own 2 books, highly regarded Bibles of Oriental dance, You Asked Aunt Rocky, Answers and Advice about Raqs Sharqi and Raqs Shabi, and the Fundamental Movement Vocabulary of Raqs Sharqi. Morocco continues to teach, research, write, lecture, perform, and hopes to keep on till 6 weeks after she's dead.
Mm-hmm. That's when the parts start falling off. Really gross.
And so you can find out more about Morocco and her incredible books and life and dance from kasbadance.org. And Morocco, it was an article that you wrote about dancing the baby into the world, where you went undercover as Amasai, or more commonly known as Berber, to firsthand witness the living history of our beloved dance. You know, I have to say that article, when I read it 20 years ago, gave me the permission to honor my felt experience of the dance, because my felt experience was of it being very powerful and transformational.
Yes.
And your own experience, first-hand experience, made me say, oh, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
This is not we're not kidding here.
Exactly. It was a shock to me because intellectually I expected one thing, but in person, and what happened and how I felt about it was a whole other thing. I didn't expect to be so moved by it. And also, since we keep learning, if we're still breathing and keeping our eyes and ears open, what I thought the movements were then were modified by what I've learned since, in that they're not Raqs Sharqi movements, but they're Shikhat movements, but they're related. It's kind of like you're not doing the cousin, you're doing the daughter of the movements.
Right.
And that I didn't realize until relatively recently, because I'm still learning.
Right. It's never ending.
No,
it's
and
never
that's what's
ending.
such fun about it.
I wanted to ask you about your story of how this dance saved your life. And so I'm wondering, there's kind of 2 parts. I call it PD and AD, pre-dance and after dance. So I would love to know about, what the world was like for you pre-dance, and then enter in Oriental dance and share what happened after.
Okay, there was kind of various steps along the way, because I was studying languages. I was going to be a teacher in the first bilingual elementary school system for bilingual kids in the late 50s. I got my first degree, I got my bachelor's in modern languages and education when I was 18. And the new teacher always gets the crud class. So they give this 18-year-old innocent little virgin, boy was that a while ago, a class of 38 Latin men between the ages of 20 and 50 who were working in an embroidery factory that was a couple of blocks away. And the owner of that embroidery factory, and this was in like 1958 when things like this didn't happen, said that if whichever of his workers learned enough English to pass the citizenship exam within the year, they would get a substantial Christmas bonus. So the school agreed to host the classes And as the new teacher, they send me in there, and here's a room full of Latino men who are not going to listen to any female who isn't in a black dress carrying rosary beads. My father had to come in uniform to pick me up at the end of the school day to get me out of the building in one piece. And that's when I decided that I don't think teaching what they think is junior high is for me. So I went into translation, and that was boring, exacting. If you had the wrong name for the product, the customs people could confiscate it. So not only was it boring, it was very stressful. And I was flipping over everything Spanish because it's such a beautiful language. And I started taking flamenco lessons, which my parents did not like. As I said, my father, the paranoid cop, thought I was going to become a whore, a drunk, and a dope addict all at once. And I haven't had the time to do any of the above, but...
Thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly. But I was taking class, and it was just for fun and for exercise. And then I went professional because I could. Mm-hmm. But I was with the Ballet Español Jiménez Vargas at the time, and we weren't paid for rehearsal. So we weren't getting paid while we were rehearsing. And I was getting skinny because I wasn't eating. The owner of the rehearsal studio was a Greek Orthodox priest who was a friend. And he said he had a job for me. It was at night. It was for 2 weeks, or longer if I wanted it for longer. And I could make some money and have enough money to eat while I was rehearsing. So I went thinking they wanted a flamenco dancer, because that was the only dance form I knew. I go with my guitarist, and the woman who owned the place takes a look at him, looks at me and says, "Who this, your husband?" No. "Your manager?" "No, he's my guitarist." "We have a guitarist." "You have a guitarist?" "We have a guitarist." Now, thinking in terms of flamenco, I said, "Does he know how to play for dancers? Because it's different than playing for singers." "Oh, yes, he plays for dancers every night." "If I change rhythm, will he change rhythm?" "Yeah, if the other musicians go along with him. You don't have to bring your own musicians. We have a musician. We have a whole band of musicians." So I said to my guitarist, "Bye." So I go inside, and she says, "Okay, let's see what you can do. Put on your costume." I go downstairs where they had a ladies' room, and I put on the dress they call the bata de cola. It's the one with the long train with all the ruffles that you kick around while you're dancing.
Right.
And I come upstairs, and she says, "What's this?" And I'm thinking, well, it's a restaurant, and I don't see a stage. I just see a flat floor and tables around. Maybe they don't like the bata because it would kick dust into people's food. So I said, okay, I have the dress with the ruffles and the polka dots. I have the riding habit. I've got a couple of other costumes. "Honey, we don't want Spanish dancer. We want ballet dancer." And I said, well, I don't do ballet, but I do escuela bolera, which is Spanish ballet. Because that's what I heard. What did I know? And
so instead of, she said belly, you heard ballet.
Right, exactly, because of the accent.
Right.
And she said, no, we want Oriental dance. And I said, I don't do Chinese, Japanese, Korean. I don't know those yet. Tell you what, honey, you sit, you watch. If you can do it, you try, okay?
Oh, that's so great.
So she pushes me down in a chair on top of all the ruffles that you're not supposed to sit on because they're starched stiff.
Right.
So I'm sitting on these ruffles that are cracking under my butt. And this woman comes on to dance. The poor puppy, she looked like Richard Nixon, 5 o'clock shadow and all.
Oh, no.
And she was built like a Christmas tree. But that wasn't the bad part. She couldn't hold a rhythm if you put it in a paper bag and rolled it up and put it in her hands. So I said, having more guts than brains, if I can't do better than that, I'll hand her my feet. And one of the other people who was auditioning said, "Oh yeah, Miss Big Mouth, I'll lend you a costume. Let's see what you can do."
Uh-huh.
So I go to put her costume on. Now she was substantially larger than I was, and she had boobs and I didn't. I was like 59 years younger and 60 pounds lighter. So I put on her costume, and I've got to stuff it with my socks and 2 rolls of toilet paper. And I come upstairs, and there was a credibility gap between the top and me. But at least I could hold a rhythm.
Right.
And so the owner, Marianta Stevens, said, "Honey, you're not Oriental dancer, but you're dancer." You look good in the costume, but you get one that has something that you got on, what you got on top, because this is too big. I know. It would give you a job 2 weeks. You look, you learn, you can stay. You look, you know, learn. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Wow.
So I had
Amazing.
a job.
Amazing.
Exactly. If Godzilla had an outfit, she would have had a job because they were desperate.
Right.
In 1960, this was the.
But they recognized something.
Well, it's also they were desperate. If Godzilla had a costume, she would have had a gig, because between 29th and 26th Street on 8th Avenue in Manhattan, then there were like 12 different Greek, Turkish, and this was going to be the first Arabic club in that group. It was called Greek Town. They would have hired anyone because they, with like 13 clubs that needed like 4 dancers each, because each club had 3 dancers that worked 6 nights a week and one that worked 3 nights when one of the other 3 wasn't working. They didn't have that many people who could do Oriental dance in New York on a professional level or willing to. So I looked human. I could hold the rhythm. I had a job. Doing what? I don't know. I'd never seen it. I'd never heard of it.
Amazing.
It was. And I go like the first night, and the music just grabbed me right by the heart. As much as I love flamenco, this music hit an even deeper chord. And because it was a new club and because they had Arabic musicians, they had this wonderful Syrian oud player named Joe Badawi, and they had a qanun player, Mohammed Al-Akkad, who had just gotten to New York after playing for the Kulthum in her orchestra for many years, where his father still was. And I heard this music, and Greek music, and Turkish, and they had a Lebanese singer, a Greek female singer, old-style Turkish male singer, and they had the clarinet. He was Greek and Turkish. There was a bouzouki player, the aforementioned guitarist, who had a penciled-in mustache, which was a hoot and a half. There's a whole other story. They didn't have a drummer. They were too cheap to pay drummers, so we had a drum for each other. But you sat there because of the cabaret laws in New York. If you were female and you worked in any establishment that had an alcohol permit, they could sell alcohol, unless you were a waitress, a barmaid, a cigarette girl, or a coat check girl, you weren't allowed to talk to the customers. This was to prevent B-girls and drunk drinks and all kinds of things that had been going on until they passed the cabaret laws. But it made it less hairy for us dancers and singers. But in between our shows, we put on our fancy little cocktail dresses and we sat on stage with the musicians. And most of the other dancers and the singers, they would smoke or drink coffee, and I didn't smoke and I didn't drink coffee then. So I would play like my castanets because I hadn't yet played finger cymbals. And they thought it was a good gimmick that I used castanets when I was dancing instead of finger cymbals. And you had to do 2 30 to 45-minute shows a night. You didn't know what music you were going to get till you got out there. So this was kind of baptism by fire, where you got to try out whatever you thought might fit, but it's also where whole families would come. These were people who, in their own hometowns over there, would never go to a restaurant or a nightclub or any place outside of the family home, except that in New York, they missed their music, they missed their food, they missed their dances. So the whole family would go, from the great-grandparents down to a little baby in the basket. Then there was a night that somebody forgot the baby in the basket under the table, and they came banging on the door at 4:30 to come and get their baby back. It was a hoot and a half. So I would watch these whole families dance singly or together, and noticed that the guys weren't afraid to get up and dance alone or with each other. But the girls were very shy, and I found out later that was cultural because they had to be very careful of their reputation. But the older ladies and the older men, they'd be up and boogieing like crazy, and I watched them like a hawk because it was beautiful. They were doing something they loved, that they cared about, and it showed. And I hadn't seen any of this in white America. So it was, what is this? I want to know more. And I also wanted to know what the musicians were saying when their mouth would be smiling and their eyes weren't, and they'd be saying things with this putting one over on you look on their face. So I asked the singers to translate the songs for me, and from them translating the songs, I learned Greek, and I was able to understand what they were saying and tell them where to put it sideways. So it was like from 9:30 in the evening till 4 in the morning. It was a continual, living, breathing, beautiful school. It was the best school that ever there was. And unfortunately, the whole attitude of these particular ethnicities for their own music and dance has changed considerably since, because the rise of pseudo-fundamentalism and various sundry other factors. But this was such a wonderful opportunity. I couldn't wait to go to work and hear this music and watch these people, because I'd never seen anything like it. There was one time when this guy was up and I thought he was drunk as a skunk, because he looked like he was weaving and about to fall over, and he was jumping up and down and hitting his heels with his hands and was pretending like he was fighting with a knife, and I thought he was drunk and crazy. So I said to the Greek singer, "He's crazy, why don't they make him sit down? He's drunk." "No, honey, he's not drunk. That Greek folk dance, that's Zembekiko." Go, no. I'd never seen it or heard of it, and here I am dumped in the middle of it, having the greatest time. So I did go off with a flamenco company to do the next job they were doing. And then when that job finished, I came back, I went right back to the Arabian Nights. And I haven't looked back. That was how I got in there. But yes, it did save my life, because it became my whole life. And not only was it something I enjoyed doing, and I was learning on the job, literally. I mean, I'd be out there having to make a dance for an audience that was there living and breathing, and musicians that I wasn't sure what they were going to play or if they were going to. I had to make something that pleased the audience, but that was also semi-coherent. And that was a continual challenge on the one hand. On the other hand, it was a continual discovery. And there was no such thing as videotape then, so I couldn't see what I did and maybe improve it or correct it or what. It was like navigating by the seat of my pants, such as they were. And
or by your belly dance belt.
Exactly.
Oops, Oriental dance belt.
Or medal, whatever. See, I wouldn't care if they called it tail twitching,
right,
as long as it got the respect as an ethnic and social dance that it deserves. But the real name in Arabic is Raqs Shar'i. Raqs means dance, and Shar'i means Eastern or Oriental in the sense of location or being oriented toward. The very word Orient in English and Oriental was from churches and, of course, then mosques facing Jerusalem, which was the Holy Land. So that the entrance to most churches in Europe were calculated to face Jerusalem. And the closer you were to Jerusalem or the Holy Land, the more you were either near East, Middle East, or Far East. You were Oriental. It was that meaning of Oriental. And it's only later that it came to include other things. But originally the dance was just called Raqs because it was the local dance with various variations.
It was what they had.
Exactly.
It was what they did.
Exactly. And only when Western and other foreign dances began creeping in that they needed to give a modifier to the name, so that they had Raqs Shar'i and Raqs Farangi or Farangi, foreign dance or Frankish dance. They called it Frankish because the first Crusaders were from France.
Right. Okay.
So they had all of that, and that's why they also still refer to Europeans as Crusaders in a not positive way.
Right.
So there's all kinds of reasons and shadings for why things are called that. But the problem with the term belly dance is A, you need more than just your abdomen. B, it isn't what any country that this dance belongs to calls it. There is a belly dance in Turkey, but it's not Raqs Shar'i. It's a dance where two people will draw a male face and a female face on their abdomen and chase each other, and it's called Eshik Meshik, and it's kind of a comedy dance that's done at weddings, where the guy is chasing the girl until she lets him catch her. That's the belly dance, because the face is on the belly, and then when they roll their stomachs, it makes the face move.
Right. Okay.
And so that's what quote-unquote belly dance.
There's your literal belly dance.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was also because when the French colonials began seeing it in North Africa and in Egypt, they use the term danse de ventre in a derogatory sense with a racist connotation. And in language, in English, in that era, we're talking 1800s, it's Victorian era, arm and leg were considered unacceptable words. You didn't mention a part of the body. Limb, exactly.
Limb.
You didn't mention a part of the body directly, and you covered the limbs of tables and chairs with big tablecloths or long ruffles, so you didn't see that tables and chairs had limbs, so you didn't remember that people had limbs and they might use them to walk toward each other and maybe get in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
So there's all this stuff that's underlying what they imbued that word with. And so polite people not only didn't say it, you very rarely saw it printed because it wasn't printed politely. The late 1800s. And everybody was wearing corsets and several layers on top. So I wouldn't have cared what they called it. As I said, if not only it got the respect it deserved, but if the people who did it got the credit for their skill and their art and their artistic interpretation of it, or whatever interpretation, instead of assuming that anybody who does quote-unquote belly dance is an easy pushover.
You know, if I had a penny for every single time someone who met me and found out I was a belly dancer lifted their shirt and started to roll their belly at me, I'd be very wealthy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, you know, it's a lot more than that.
Exactly.
I'll have you know.
Exactly.
But the whole underlying intention with this series is to actually, as dancers, we've drank the Kool-Aid. We know how powerful this dance
Yes, it is.
And we've seen, if we're teachers or as students ourselves, we see over and over and over again women who come in, maybe hunched over, meek, and then within a few classes change completely, and they change their lives. They have more autonomy. They make decisions that you know, completely change the shape of their lives. So we know how powerful this dance is.
And I've had students cry when they were able to articulate a part of the body that they had a phobia about. One of my students, she was rather buxom, and here I am still looking like a 14-year-old boy who could drop the soap in a straight line from my neck to my feet. And when she first started being able to move her shoulders, she just broke down and cried because she had such a phobia against her own bust, because her grandmother would put her hands on her chest and say, "Cover up, you're tempting men into evil." And to have like some of the stuff that we're subjected to by our culture subliminally. And I had parts of my body that weren't functioning properly because of whatever emotional or physical traumas. I was told that I could never get pregnant because my fallopian tubes were all kind of scrunched up and pasted together because of having been beaten severely when I was a child in Romania. And the dance, and particularly the quiver, straightened it out to the point where my periods became regular. I was ovulating, egg A could get to place B, and at one point I ended up pregnant. Fortunately for the creature, I had a miscarriage because I wasn't fit to be anyone's mother at the time. But it was the dance and the movements of the dance that straightened that out, and several other parts of my body that were kind of, I had to work around them. When I first started taking flamenco classes, my shoulders were all the way up under my ears, and I had to like learn how to get them down and out of the way so that they were where shoulders should be. And with Oriental dance, when I was learning the technique, it straightened so much of that out. But it also allowed me to feel parts of the body I didn't know I had by being able to articulate them. And what I didn't know at the time, because we come from a bigger, harder, faster, stronger, workaholic culture, the movements go so naturally with the human body that they feel much smaller than they look. I'm doing this for like 59 years. Oh, wow. 59 years. I couldn't count that high. But as you do it, it teaches you. As you find parts of you didn't know were there, or you find them more finitely, it does teach you, and it not only saves your life, it makes your life. I didn't know I was going to be doing this. I'm fond of saying real life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. This was supposed to be a 2-week temporary gig. in December of 1960. The gig was supposed to be the first 2 weeks of January of 1961. Actually, the second and the third week. And then I was going to be with the flamenco company, and that was it.
Amazing.
And yeah, exactly. And it was like, I was sitting there all night, not knowing where to look first. And I'd been there about a week and a half, and I was in the ladies' room downstairs, which was where we dressed. And this woman comes over and starts yammering at me in Arabic. And I looked at her and said, "English, please, I don't speak Arabic." And she said, "What do you mean you don't speak Arabic?" I said, "I don't speak Arabic." "But your dance is so authentic, I can still smell the camel on you."
Wow, what a compliment.
Yeah, exactly, but I thought, this is a compliment.
Camels are a little smelly.
Oh, they're awful. They stink. People who think camels are cute have never lived next to a camel.
No.
What? Anywho, long story short, it turns out that she was half Saudi and half Italian. Saudi and Bahraini and Italian. And she was a dancer, and she learned from her grandma. And so I said I really liked what was happening, but I didn't know what I was doing. I'm shocked that she said that I looked authentic, because I'd never seen a real one. So she took me home and showed me a few things. We became friends for years. A couple of weeks later, there was a Syrian granny that decided to adopt me because I looked like one of her daughters who was still back in Aleppo with her husband and family, and she missed her very much. And I looked just like her, and they could see I was a good girl because I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I wasn't making goo-goo eyes at the men. I was busy watching the women dance because I wanted to learn what they were doing. And someone else who took me home, and she and her siblings and some friends, pretty much like once a month, they'd make a lot of baklava, and they'd have these baklava dancing parties where they'd be in this basement kitchen making tons and tons of baklava. And I couldn't bake, I didn't know how to make it, but I could chop walnuts and I could wash dishes. So they invited me to come and then dance with them after, because they would just boogie. And that's how I learned, because there were no schools then. Mm-hmm. It didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And that was how I learned. I assimilated it the way they learned it. Mm-hmm. Because I was with the grannies and the aunties and the cousins and the uncles. And because I looked like them, I was acceptable, because I pretty much properly behaved in public. I was acceptable, and because I wasn't a direct relative, it wasn't too big a sin that I danced.
Right. Yeah, everybody wants a dancer at their wedding, but not one in the family.
Exactly. And that's a hoot and a half, because at the wedding, it's the mother of the bride who's supposed to dance to show how happy she is that her daughter's getting married. And the mother of the groom too, but it's incumbent upon the mother of the bride. And these are things you don't find in textbooks. You find them out by being there.
Yeah.
Not only has it made me a much happier, in a lot of other ways other than the osteoporosis, a healthier person, and I've seen it save other people's lives. Tons. In just about every class I've taught, there's at least one or two that are dealing with some kind of traumatic issue from their either childhood or the young adulthood, because women in this culture are very much victims of violence, and if not physical rape, emotional and mental rape over and over again, and it leaves emotional and physical and mental scars. And I've seen this dance give so many people themselves back and give themselves permission to be who they are.
When you were studying abroad or with the women, their indigenous dances would be this dance. Did you come across other healing ceremonies or?
Well, yeah, there was like the trance ritual, the Gidra, which wasn't healing so much as sharing souls, love, and peace. And what shocked the heck out of me in a very positive and wonderful way is in almost every instance where I've done it, where there were what I call civilians in the audience, people who didn't have a clue about the culture. When I did Gidra, or when I presented my dance company doing Gidra, they got it. They would thank me. And I've had people come backstage after a show to thank me with tears in their eyes. And I know that it touched me the first time I saw a bit of it. And that's when I started traveling to Morocco to find real Gidra from the real people, because it had moved me so much. But that was me. I didn't expect it, and I'm not the most tightly packed person. I am just one walking question mark. I want to know everything about everything. So I will go to the ends of the earth to find my answers. I don't expect that from most quote-unquote normal people. And so when I'm getting this kind of feedback, this is wonderful. When I see what rituals of appeasement, like the Tsar, which is in Morocco, it's called the Hadra, which is sometimes confused with the Gidra, but it's its direct opposite, or the Stambuli, or any of these rituals to get the evil spirits out in a way of venting frustration in cultures where women have no outlets to vent their frustration, except for something where they can say the spirit took over. A lot of that, and seeing how that really helps and really eases the spirit and calms the person and helps toward giving themselves back to themselves. It's a continual affirmation and a continual discovery of deeper and more varied ways that this is beneficial. We have gotten so far away from who we are and letting ourselves be who we are, because it's still socially acceptable. Once you know that it's there, you let it out as you will or as you won't. And we just don't understand, because our culture mitigates against it. Things that people tend to poo-poo as fantasy, when we know they're real. Mm-hmm. It's just that we've been brainwashed out of the abilities.
Something that defies your rational mind, that you actually experience, that you may not even have words for, that get completely belittled.
Yes,
and
exactly. And when they tell you that something you know happened because you were there, and they tell you it doesn't exist, it's like, and what planet are you on? Because I'm on this one, and I know what I saw.
Well, cheers to that.
Yeah.
Cheers!
Very much. That's how I knew to answer you.
Yeah, so it's amazing to go from school teacher to translation to flamenco to a whole whirlwind magic carpet ride of an international career that spanned 59 years.
And still going.
And still going strong.
And thank God for the internet, because I've had 3 spinal surgeries in the last couple of years, so I'm still not even walking properly yet, and I'd like to get back to being able to move better.
For people who want to reach you, they can reach you through your website, Kasbah Dance.
Or at my email address, morocco@kasbahdance.org.
We'll have links provided for that.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. And are you giving any upcoming seminars or anything coming up that we should know about?
I've got, well, only for the people who bought the Bellydance bundle. I'm doing another lecture on their website, but you have to have bought the bundle to get it. I probably will be doing it at the same lecture at a later date for either Maheen or for Medat Dance Geeks. Yeah, Middle East, North African, and Turkish.
It was such a delight. Thank you for sharing how Oriental Dance saved your life.
It's still saving it. If I didn't have that, I'd probably be paralyzed or in a wheelchair by now. But I don't take no for an answer, so here I am.
And the dance doesn't take no for an answer either.
Isn't it the truth?
That's the truth.
Isn't it the truth? It's like we would work till 4 a.m, and then those of us who were more open or crazier than the rest, we would go to a coffee shop in the village and continue dancing and like working with the musicians who were in the other clubs who came down to jam until 6, 7 in the morning. And on the day I was off, I would go to one of the other restaurants or clubs to watch dancers there, because since I wasn't working in that restaurant, I could get up and do the folk dances with the people that were there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Non-stop.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, honey, my pleasure.
So
that's really good wine. I'm drunk as a skunk on
Me
a few
too.
That is really good wine. And it's also the vibe that I'm drunk on.
I know, it's great.
I'm wondering if I can get up and find out.